The day you stop needing approval is not dramatic. There is no announcement. No visible transformation that others applaud. In fact, most people will not notice it at all. But internally, it is one of the most decisive moments a human being can experience. Because from that day forward, your life stops being negotiated. Most people believe they want happiness, success, or freedom. What they actually want, though they rarely admit it, is approval. To be seen as good, acceptable, impressive, safe from judgment. And because approval feels like safety, they shape their lives around it without realizing the cost. Marcus Aurelius warned himself daily not to become absorbed by reputation, not because reputation is evil, but because dependence on it makes the mind fragile. A mind that needs approval is never still. It watches faces. It listens for tone changes. It adjusts itself constantly, like water poured into whatever container is nearest. And over time, this constant adjustment erodes identity. You do not lose yourself all at once. You lose yourself in fragments. In moments where silence feels safer than truth. In moments where agreement feels easier than honesty. In moments where you betray your own judgment to avoid discomfort. Each time feels insignificant. Necessary, even. But years of this create a person who no longer knows where they end and others begin. Stoicism calls this slavery, not to people, but to opinion. Epictetus was clear: if you want to know who controls you, look at whose approval you seek. The moment your peace depends on how someone else sees you, you have handed them authority over your inner life. And authority, once given away, is rarely returned voluntarily. Approval is seductive because it disguises itself as kindness, belonging, and success. It tells you that adapting is maturity. That blending in is wisdom. That restraint is intelligence. But there is a difference between discipline and self-erasure. Stoicism never asked you to disappear for the comfort of others. It asked you to govern yourself according to reason and virtue, regardless of how that appears. Most people live with an unspoken fear: if I am fully myself, I will be rejected. So they compromise, slowly, strategically, convincingly. They learn when to soften their opinions. When to laugh at what they don't respect. When to stay quiet about what matters to them. And eventually, they forget that these were compromises at all. They call it being realistic. They call it reading the room. They call it being mature. But inside, something feels unresolved. A quiet dissatisfaction that no achievement seems to cure. Seneca observed that no one is satisfied with living well if they are obsessed with being seen living well. Approval turns life into performance. Performance turns character into costume. And costumes cannot protect you when life becomes difficult. This is why approval seeking increases anxiety rather than reducing it. You are never done. One person's praise does not secure the next person's. One group's acceptance does not guarantee permanence. So you remain vigilant, scanning for threats, adjusting again and again. Calm becomes impossible because your center of gravity is outside yourself. Stoicism relocates that center. It asks a brutal but liberating question: what is actually within your control? Not how people interpret you. Not whether they agree. Not whether they approve. Only your judgment. Your intention. Your action. The day you truly accept this, not intellectually, but emotionally, something breaks open. You realize how much energy you have wasted managing perceptions. How many decisions were made defensively rather than deliberately. How often you chose what was safe over what was right. This realization can be uncomfortable, even painful, because it exposes how much of your life has been shaped by fear disguised as courtesy. But Stoicism does not allow you to dwell in regret. It demands responsibility, not shame. Marcus Aurelius did not criticize himself for being tempted by approval. He reminded himself to return to what mattered, again and again. Because even the disciplined mind drifts under constant pressure. You live in an age where approval is quantified, counted, displayed, traded. Never before has human opinion been so visible, so constant, so invasive. And never before have so many people felt so internally unstable. This is not coincidence. A person who needs approval cannot be steady. They are permanently leaning outward. Their sense of self depends on reflection, not substance. And reflection distorts. Stoicism teaches that your worth does not increase when praised nor decrease when criticized. Praise reveals the speaker's values, not your essence. Criticism reveals their perspective, not your character. When you internalize this, emotional resilience becomes possible. But most people resist this lesson because approval feels like love. Losing it feels like danger. The Stoics would say this confusion is the root of much suffering. Love is alignment with virtue. Approval is agreement with appearance. One strengthens you. The other weakens you. The day you stop needing approval, you do not become cold or indifferent. You become precise. You stop explaining yourself unnecessarily. You stop performing emotional labor for comfort that is not reciprocal. You stop shrinking your presence to make others comfortable with their own insecurities. This does not make you hostile. It makes you honest. And honesty has weight. People feel it even when nothing is said. Calm replaces defensiveness. Silence replaces over-justification. Boundaries appear without being announced. This is why those who no longer seek approval often appear confident, even when they are quiet. Their energy is no longer fragmented. Stoicism calls this inner freedom. Not freedom from responsibility, but freedom from dependency. And once you experience it, even briefly, you begin to see the world differently. You notice how often others posture. How often they speak not to express truth, but to secure position. You notice how reactive people become when approval is threatened. And you understand why so few people are at peace. Peace requires independence of judgment. The day you stop needing approval, life does not become easier. But it becomes clearer. Decisions sharpen. Relationships simplify. Conflict loses its emotional charge. You are no longer trying to be understood by everyone, only to act in accordance with what you know to be right. This is not isolation. It is integrity. And integrity, once established, becomes a source of quiet power. When you stop needing approval, something subtle but irreversible happens. Your inner dialogue changes. The constant internal questioning, was that okay? Did I say too much? Did they misunderstand me? Begins to quiet. Not because you suddenly stop caring, but because you finally understand what caring is for. The Stoics never argued that human beings should be indifferent to others. They argued that we should be indifferent to what is not ours to govern. And approval has never been ours to govern. It has always been borrowed, conditional, unstable. To build your identity on it is to build on moving ground. Most people do not realize how early approval conditioning begins. As children, approval keeps us safe. It teaches us the rules. It signals belonging. But what protects a child can imprison an adult. Many people continue living as if rejection is a threat to survival, even when it is only a threat to ego. This is why disapproval feels so physical. The chest tightens. The stomach sinks. The mind races. These reactions are not rational, they are inherited. Ancient survival responses misfiring in modern social situations. Stoicism does not mock these reactions. It observes them, names them, and refuses to obey them. Epictetus taught that emotions are not commands. They are information. Fear does not mean danger. Discomfort does not mean error. Disapproval does not mean failure. But if you have spent your life equating approval with safety, your nervous system will argue otherwise. Breaking this pattern requires more than motivation. It requires practice in discomfort. The day you stop needing approval is usually preceded by many small moments where you choose silence over defense. Where you allow misunderstanding to exist without correcting it. Where you let someone be disappointed without rescuing them emotionally. These moments feel wrong at first. Almost irresponsible. But slowly, you realize something important: nothing collapses. People adjust. Or they leave. Or they reveal themselves. And you remain. This is when identity begins to solidify. The Stoics believed character is revealed under pressure, not comfort. Approval-seeking avoids pressure by constantly adapting. But adaptation without principle leads to fragmentation. You become many versions of yourself, none of them whole. Once you step out of that cycle, you begin acting from a single internal reference point. You ask different questions before speaking or acting. Is this true? Is this necessary? Is this aligned with who I am trying to become? Notice what is missing. Will they like this? This shift does not make you reckless. It makes you deliberate. You speak less, but with more weight. You explain less, but stand more firmly. You no longer rush to be understood because you trust time to reveal consistency. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that it is better to behold and admired. Admiration fades quickly. Wholeness compounds. When approval is no longer the goal, courage becomes more natural. Not loud courage, not dramatic courage, but quiet refusal. Refusal to lie to yourself. Refusal to betray your judgment. Refusal to participate in games that cost you your peace. This is why people who stop seeking approval often lose certain relationships. Not because they become arrogant, but because the relationship was built on accommodation rather than respect. When you stop bending, weak structures break. Stoicism does not promise that integrity will be rewarded socially. It promises that it will free you internally. And freedom, once felt, becomes non-negotiable. You begin to notice how much of modern life is engineered to keep you approval dependent. Metrics. Feedback loops. Rankings. Visibility. The Stoics would recognize this instantly, a system that profits from emotional instability. A system that rewards reaction rather than reflection. But a disciplined mind cannot be easily exploited. The moment you stop needing approval, you reclaim time. Time previously spent rehearsing conversations. Replaying interactions. Anticipating reactions. Defending imaginary accusations. That time returns to you. And with it, clarity. Clarity allows you to see that most people are not judging you nearly as much as you think. They are too busy managing their own need for approval. And the few who do judge harshly are revealing their values, not your worth. Seneca wrote that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Approval seeking lives almost entirely in imagination. catastrophizing rejection, romanticizing praise. Both are distortions. Reality is simpler. You act. Consequences follow. You adjust according to reason, not fear. This is the Stoic cycle. As approval loses its grip, something else replaces it: self-respect. Not the fragile kind that needs constant reinforcement, but the quiet kind that comes from alignment. From knowing that your actions reflect your principles, even when inconvenient. Self-respect does not need an audience. This is why Stoic figures emphasized private virtue over public recognition. What you do when no one is watching matters more than what you perform when everyone is watching. Approval cannot see your private discipline. But your character is built there. The day you stop needing approval, you also stop oversharing. You realize not everyone deserves access to your inner world. Explanation becomes optional. Silence becomes a boundary. You no longer confuse openness with self-exposure. This can feel lonely at first. Not because you are alone, but because you are no longer constantly mirrored. Many people mistake mirroring for connection. Stoicism teaches that connection without integrity is noise. True connection survives independence. Praise changes too. It becomes information, not nourishment. You accept it politely, without letting it inflate or direct you. Because dependence on praise is simply approval seeking in a pleasant disguise. This emotional neutrality is often misunderstood. People may call you distant, unemotional, cold. In reality, you have simply stopped outsourcing your emotional regulation. And that unsettles those who still do. The Stoics warn that once you step out of the crowd psychologically, the crowd will attempt to pull you back, sometimes with criticism, sometimes with guilt, sometimes with praise. All are attempts to restore predictability. But you are no longer predictable in that way. You are governed internally. This is where life truly changes. Not externally at first, but internally, which eventually alters everything else. Decisions become cleaner. You tolerate less nonsense. You pursue fewer goals, but with more commitment. You stop chasing paths that look impressive but feel empty. You no longer ask, "What should I be?" You ask, "What is worth being?" That question simplifies life brutally. And simplicity is strength. From here, momentum builds quietly. You do not need to announce your transformation. Others will feel it. Some will respect it. Some will resent it. Neither response requires your permission. What matters is that for the first time, your life belongs to you. And once life belongs to you, it becomes something you can shape deliberately, rather than negotiate endlessly. As this inner freedom stabilizes, you begin to understand a truth that the Stoics considered foundational: no one can approve you into a meaningful life. Meaning is not granted. It is constructed, patiently, often invisibly, through repeated alignment between belief and action. This is why the day you stop needing approval does not arrive with applause. It arrives quietly. Often in moments that look ordinary to everyone else. You decline something without justification. You hold your position without hostility. You walk away from a conversation that demands self-betrayal. No one claps. But something in you settles. That settling is self-trust. And self-trust changes the texture of life. When you trust yourself, indecision decreases. Not because choices become easier, but because you stop seeking external permission to choose. You accept responsibility for outcomes, good or bad, without dramatizing them. This is deeply Stoic. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that what harms the body does not necessarily harm the soul, and what displeases others does not necessarily dishonor you. Approval-seeking externalizes responsibility. If things go well, you feel validated. If they go poorly, you feel exposed. Stoic independence internalizes responsibility. Success becomes feedback. Failure becomes instruction. Neither defines you. This internalization is what allows you to remain steady under social pressure. When a group leans one way, you do not instinctively lean with them. You pause. You examine. You decide. Sometimes you align. Sometimes you don't. But the choice is yours, not reflexive. This is rare. And rarity attracts attention. Ironically, when you stop seeking approval, you often receive more of it. Not because you chased it, but because people sense coherence. Humans are drawn to those who appear self-governed. But Stoicism warns you not to mistake this as proof of worth. It is simply a byproduct, and one you must remain indifferent to. Epictetus cautioned against becoming enslaved to admiration just as much as to criticism. Both chain you to the crowd. The deeper shift is not how others treat you, it is how you treat yourself after interaction. You stop replaying conversations obsessively. You stop rewriting your words in your head. You stop asking how you came across. You know how you came across, honestly, intentionally, within your values. And if that was not enough for someone else, you let that stand. This ability to let things stand is a form of power. Most people rush to fix perceptions. Stoics let reality unfold. Time exposes sincerity. Consistency dissolves misinterpretation. Explanation, by contrast, often weakens presence. It signals doubt where none may be needed. There is also a moral dimension to releasing approval seeking. When you live to be liked, you are easily manipulated. You say what gains approval, not what is true. You remain silent when speaking would cost you social comfort. The Stoics saw this as a quiet erosion of virtue. Courage is not always dramatic confrontation. Often it is the refusal to distort yourself for acceptance. This refusal will test you. There will be moments when standing firm costs you opportunities. When honesty narrows options. When refusing to perform makes you invisible. Stoicism does not romanticize these moments, it prepares you for them. The Stoic measure of success is not expansion at any cost, but integrity at all costs. Seneca warned that the man who adapts himself to every opinion eventually loses his own. Without an inner compass, progress becomes random. Ambition becomes noise. Once approval is no longer the compass, you must define your own standards. This is uncomfortable. It removes excuses. You cannot blame the crowd if you drift. You cannot hide behind norms if you fail. But you gain something greater, agency. Agency is the quiet confidence that you are living by choice, not drift. That your life is an expression, not a reaction. This is why Stoics emphasize daily reflection. Not to judge themselves harshly, but to recalibrate. To ask, did I act according to reason? Did I let fear of opinion override judgment? Did I preserve my character today? These questions matter more than popularity metrics ever could. As you practice this, emotional reactions soften. You still feel disappointment. You still feel tension. But you no longer panic when approval is absent. Absence no longer feels like rejection, just information. And information is neutral. This neutrality is mistaken for detachment, but it is actually depth. You are no longer shallowly influenced. You respond from a deeper center. You are less reactive, more grounded. Less eager to impress, more focused on impact. Your values become visible through restraint. Eventually, you realize that many conflicts were never about disagreement, they were about unmet expectations of compliance. When you stop complying, conflict surfaces. This is not failure. It is clarity. Clarity reorganizes your relationships. Some deepen. Some dissolve. Some transform. Stoicism teaches acceptance of this process without bitterness. You do not resent those who leave. You do not chase those who misunderstand. You wish them well, and move forward. Moving forward becomes easier because your energy is no longer scattered. Approval-seeking fractures attention. Independence concentrates it. You choose fewer commitments. You protect your time. You guard your mind. You become selective, not from arrogance, but from respect for your limited attention. This is when discipline becomes natural. You no longer need external accountability to stay consistent. Your standard is internal. And internal standards are harder to escape. The day you stop needing approval, life does not become easier. It becomes clearer. And clarity, while demanding, is far less exhausting than confusion. You are no longer asking the world who to be. You are answering that question yourself, daily, through action. And that is the beginning of true freedom. As this freedom matures, something even more subtle occurs. Your inner dialogue changes. The voice that once asked, "Was that enough?" or "Do they approve?" grows quiet. In its place rises a different question, one the Stoics considered sacred: was this aligned with reason and character? This is not a louder voice. It does not beg for reassurance. It speaks calmly, firmly, and without drama. And because it does, you begin to trust it. Trusting yourself does not mean you believe you are always right. It means you believe you are capable of correction without humiliation. Approval-seeking fears error because error risks rejection. Stoic self-mastery accepts error as part of growth. Mistakes become teachers, not verdicts. This is why a person who no longer needs approval can apologize without collapsing, and stand firm without hostility. They do not confuse humility with self-erasure, nor confidence with dominance. They understand that dignity is not something others grant, it is something you maintain. Over time, this dignity becomes visible in how you speak. You no longer over-explain. You no longer rush to fill silence. You allow pauses to exist. Silence no longer feels threatening because it does not endanger your worth. In Stoicism, silence is not weakness, it is evidence of inner order. Most people speak to secure acceptance. The Stoic speaks to express truth or necessity. Nothing more. And because your words become fewer, they become heavier. You also begin to notice how much of modern suffering is social in nature, not because people are cruel, but because they are unexamined. The craving for approval drives comparison, envy, posturing, and performative identity. People compete for visibility instead of virtue. They chase validation instead of mastery. Once you step out of this cycle, you see it clearly, and you stop resenting it. Resentment requires investment. You have withdrawn yours. This withdrawal does not make you cold. It makes you precise. You choose where to care. You choose whom to listen to. You choose which feedback matters. Stoics never rejected counsel, they rejected noise. Epictetus advised listening only to those whose character you respect, not those whose opinions are loud. This discernment protects you from two extremes, arrogance and dependency. You are neither dismissive of all feedback nor enslaved by it. You weigh it. You integrate what improves you. You discard the rest without bitterness. This balance is rare and powerful. As approval fades in importance, ambition recalibrates. You no longer want success that requires self-betrayal. You no longer envy those who trade peace for applause. You begin to admire qualities that once went unnoticed: consistency, restraint, courage under obscurity. You start to understand why the Stoics warned against fame. Fame amplifies the opinions of others, and multiplies dependency. A quiet life governed by reason, they believed, was not lesser. It was freer. This does not mean withdrawal from the world. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire. It means participation without surrender. You engage fully, but you do not give away authorship of your inner state. And so, when praised, you remain grounded. When criticized, you remain intact. When misunderstood, you remain patient. When ignored, you remain purposeful. This steadiness changes how you move through difficulty. Rejection no longer devastates. It clarifies. Loss no longer humiliates. It instructs. Conflict no longer threatens identity. It tests composure. Stoicism teaches that adversity reveals what comfort conceals. Approval-seeking avoids adversity. Inner freedom walks through it, eyes open, posture upright. There is also a loneliness that comes with this path. Not the loneliness of isolation, but the loneliness of self-leadership. Fewer people will fully understand your choices. Fewer will echo your convictions. But the Stoics never promised companionship, they promised coherence. And coherence sustains you when consensus cannot. Eventually, you stop measuring your life by how it looks and start measuring it by how it feels to live. Calm replaces urgency. Focus replaces noise. Direction replaces drift. You no longer need to announce who you are becoming. Your daily habits reveal it. Your boundaries confirm it. Your reactions demonstrate it. This is why the Stoics insisted that philosophy was not something you studied, it was something you practiced. Wisdom that does not alter behavior is decoration. Real wisdom reorganizes life. The day you stop needing approval is not the day others disappear. It is the day they stop deciding who you are. From that day forward, your life belongs to you, not in theory, but in practice. And that is the quiet revolution the Stoics lived for. Like, comment, and subscribe for more videos like this.